you can go look in the DNS and get a secure statement about what that key should be and get more assurance that that cert and only that cert is the one you should trust. The current situation today is that the browser has all these trust anchors in the trust anchor store. All these certificate authorities certs are in the browser. There's hundreds, actually. And any one of those certificate authorities can issue a certificate for any domain. So this is exactly what the problem with Komodo 2 weeks ago was, is somebody figured out how to make Komodo issue certificates for Google. And those certs, if they got deployed, all the browsers in the world would trust those certs because they were signed by a trust anchor that's embedded in all the browsers. So what we want to do, that's an inclusive model. It's inclusive trust. What we would like to see is exclusive trust, where only one entity can issue certs for a given site, like PayPal. And if anybody else does it, the browser won't trust it. That's what we're driving for. That's what we want to see. There's a lot of politics involved in that effort because the certificate authorities don't want their business to go away. So it's rather entertaining. So the WebSec working group, there's a pointer to the charter. These are some of the specs that are in it. I need to update this to include the requirements draft. I got started on that, and so there's a draft out now. In the Web App Sec working group, the mission is to develop security and policy mechanisms to improve the security of web applications, yay. And we need to secure cross-site communication. So they're going to take the core spec and the uniform messaging policy specs from the web apps group and put them into Web App Sec, because the idea is to get people who are security oriented working together in a focused working group. Content security policy and such. Gee, and what about pieces of HTML5? There's a pointer to the draft charter and such. And what we're working on there is trying to get a chair, and then we can get that, that group formally launched. And this is the Dane working group that we were talking about already. I was getting ahead of myself. And there's a Dane protocol draft. It's in Rev 6. There's a huge amount of discussion about this. There were lots of messages to the list even during the working group session. So there's work that lacks a home. One of the big problems we have in the browser world is user interfaces. There's the browser's behavior are starting to diverge. In Chrome, the recent versions of Chrome, they use the green color even for domain validated certs. And then they use more green for extended validation sites. And there was kind of some people were upset about this because before this, the browsers had all kind of seemed to agree that domain validated were blue. And the Chrome guys didn't ask anybody. Now, does this matter, the color in the location bar, to the vast majority of people? If you look at some of the user study papers that have come out over the past few years, the answer is no. Because it doesn't matter, because they don't know, the vast majority of people out there, they don't even look at the location bar. They click links. They don't type into it. They never see what color it is. They have no idea what it means. What's a certificate? Why should I care? I just want to go to my bank and transfer money to my kid in college, you know? And in the mobile world, a lot of these indicators that are in the browser Chrome on the desktop world can't be displayed because the in the mobile world, they're eliminating the browser Chrome because it takes up screen real estate. So Safari doesn't have a location bar these days. I hear. I haven't played with an iPhone recently. But some of these indicators come and go how you tap the screen because they're trying to maximize the use of real estate. And how do you convey notions of security to users who don't have any concept of what's going on? It's a really hard problem. And none of this is getting standardized. It's probably premature because we don't know what we're doing. But my colleague Andy and I kind of think, gee, you know, there probably should be, if we can figure out stuff that's effective, do real user studies, do some real out-of-the-box thinking, if we can figure that stuff out and actually have something that's demonstrably more effective, then can we standardize it? Can we, and gee, if we could even get the browser vendors to agree to trying to standardize it, where would we do that? Maybe the W3C, maybe we need a new organization. It's hard to say. That's very long-term stuff, but we think that it probably needs to get addressed. The Dane Working Group and stuff, this is the stuff we were talking about with the certificate authorities. There's no clear place to have that addressed. The certificate authorities and the browser vendors have their own little private club called the CA Browser Forum. And that's the group that established the guidelines for extended validation certificates. It's not really a standards org per se. It's a very closed club. It's not clear how, where and how we're going to be addressing the multitude of CA and trust anchor problem, except by going around them, like to some degree we're trying to do in the Dane Working Group. Should we have a combination of the CA Browser Forum plus WebTrust and have a tighter integration there? Not sure. WebTrust is the organization that establishes the auditing criteria for certificate authorities. So if you go to the WebTrust site and poke around, you'll find how they guidelines for someone to audit a certificate authority. So you guys can help. Almost all this work is in the open and is openly done, and you can participate if you wish. So you can participate in the IETF and the W3C working groups. You can try to deploy your websites securely. You can utilize some of these tools. We should have put X-frame options up there too. And you can provide feedback to the working groups. And this is what we want web security to look like. You remember that other slide where the guy has the hat and everything? Well, we'd like it more to look like this. And that's what we're trying to do. So, questions?
I have a question, of course. You try to detail some of the options like CSP or TC, HSTC, and you didn't went into the details of a no-script option, because I normally use no-script. And how does the no-script, for example, stand with or against the frame busting application? Do you have any idea?
I'm not sure. I would have to look to see if Giorgio has a framing directive in the ABE. I'm not sure whether he does or not. He might.
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure.
So ABE, Application Boundaries Enforcer, is more about the network operations that a web application instance can do. And it complements content security policy, because content security policy is more about how the quote-unquote content that comes back gets interpreted and utilized. But you're right, we didn't talk much about ABE in this at all, besides mentioning it. So that's a good point that we could put it in. I would have to go grovel around and pull up the spec, his documentation, to be able to answer the question correctly.
Completely in the beginning, you talked about for example, including the JavaScript for analytics. Do you have any, Google Analytics?
Mm-hmm.
Because quite a lot of pages use it.
Yep.
And, do you have any info about the insecurities in the Google Analytics code or something like this? Because it is just a simple code that loads another code, probably loads another code again.
Right. So the point we were trying to make there is if you're including arbitrary JavaScript, you're completely trusting that entity. So everybody who includes Google Analytics is trusting that the Google developers who write the Google Analytics JavaScript don't get it wrong, do it right, and are not malicious. You're just kind of crossing your fingers and going, okay. So yeah, a lot of people, and trusting Google on this is probably a good bet, but would you include arbitrary site analytics JavaScript from just anybody? No, because it's difficult, because today they can do anything. So in some ways, in a perverse way, that gives Google an advantage on site analytics. It's difficult to compete with them because you're just trusting their reputation. And so if somebody else tried to cook up some business model with site analytics, it's difficult for them to get adoption because there's some little startup probably in a garage somewhere and nobody wants to trust them because they can't safely include their JavaScript. So some of this has business ramifications. Yes?
I will try one more question.
Sure.
I hope it will work. We were talking about the Dane working group. I was there.
Yeah.
And I was listening about, I didn't actually understand how they want to deploy the Dane protocol, because it seems like the TLS PX evaluation process, or which you are running, if you get a certificate to authentize it or something like that. Now it's working. You have to find a path to your chest anchor, and with the Dane besides it, it will be just a helper for this, or it will be a separate mechanism to key distribution, or there will be more and more and more chest anchors and more anchors, right?
Well,
will it grow to?
Well,